Welcome back, and let's talk a little bit of business. I do have Barbara Alimi, the head of marketing and communications at the National Social and Security Fund. We want to understand NSSF's voluntary membership plan. It has some 33,000 plus members. Last year, even though the COVID-19 pandemic was actually biting, they did accrue some 38 billion Ugandan shillings, and I was quite amazed. Up to now, they do have some 73 billion Ugandan shillings they could boast of as members of this plan. Now, we would like to know what it means exactly. We do have Barbara Alimi. Very good morning, Barbara.
Good morning.
What is the NSSF voluntary membership plan?
The voluntary plan is really an option that allows members who are not under the mandatory scheme. And by mandatory, it implies those who are employing more than 5.
Oh, yeah.
So those who don't fit within that category are allowed within the voluntary contributions plan to now remit their NSSF contributions for their members of staff.
Indeed.
So that is really what this plan is all about.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So let's take, for example, a law firm or an engineering firm or someone who has registered a business, let's say an events management company. That person can choose and say, I want to actually be part of this voluntary contributions plan. And so they'll come and register their company. And then after that, they'll also register the employees who are actually under that company. And so then that is a voluntary contributions because the current NSSF Act, section basically 10 and basically 10.1 and 10.3 actually provide for it. And so that is really what it's all about within the law and how someone can go for it here.
So who qualifies to enroll for the voluntary membership plan?
One, within section 10.3 of the NSSF Act, there are those people who initially were NSSF members. And so that implies, let's say, for example, myself, I'm now working with NSSF, but if I left the job and then perhaps I started doing something for myself, then I would be self-employed. But don't forget, my employer already had remitted NSSF for me. So that implies I was already an NSSF member with a number.
Yes.
So if I fit within that category, I'm now doing my own thing, but I have an existing number for NSSF, I can actually come forward and then I remit my contributions.
All right.
That is the first category. The second category fits for employers who employ less than 5.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you're employing less than 5 and like I said, you're a contractor, you're not required by law to remit NSSF contributions. But then you want to motivate your employees, you want to help them retire well, so you just make a decision, register your company, and then register your employees under that. Under
the voluntary plan.
Exactly.
Because the law requires those who have 5 employees and more to mandatorily remit. But those who are having 5 and less, they are exempted. But under the voluntary membership plan, if you wish to, you can actually remit.
Exactly.
But first, after registering you as the employer.
Yes. I see. So the employer has to register, and then the only option where there is an employer that is not required to register is when you are already registered under an employer. And then you have a number.
I left the job.
You left the job,
to do
but
my
you
side
still
business.
Have, exactly. And you still have your number. So you can use that number and just say, I want to now activate this number for the voluntary contributions, and then you continue remitting for yourself.
What about I start my mobile money business? It is the only business. I'm self-employed. I've never worked for anyone else. I do not have a number with NSSF. Do I register fresh, get one number, and continue remitting? Even though I do not have any other employees, I'm the only one.
Yes, you can.
I see.
Because your business is actually registered officially, and there's a separation between the employer and the employee because it's now a separate entity.
Indeed.
Let's say, for example, it's maybe mobile cash or something. That's a separate entity that is registered to trade. So you register that business under the voluntary employers, and then you register yourself under that business, and then you start remitting for yourself. But it's not allowed when there is no separation between, let's say, for example, a border rider. I own the border. and I have not registered this as a business entity.
I see.
So I just have maybe a border license. So there's no separation there.
You first have to register it and say, I'm offering transportation
Exactly.
services.
So it has to be an entity.
Then you start remitting to the NSSF.
Exactly.
I also did hear, actually I was reading some literature over this, and even though I retired, got my money from the NSSF, yes, at the access, at the end of the day, I'm still actually qualifying for this.
Exactly, until you're 60 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this.
So we have members, we actually have quite a number of members who are over the age of 55, but they chose to remit their contributions voluntarily, and they still maintain a balance, they earn their interest. And I think it's just something maybe about financial planning. Perhaps they really don't need this money, but instead want to continue saving and earning the attractive returns for the members.
What are some of the features of the voluntary membership plan, Apprentice?
Okay, first of all, it's very affordable. With as little as 5,000 shillings, someone can enroll and just continue to remit that 5,000 shillings. Everything that you put onto that account is your money. Then when you're enrolling and you remit 5,000, it's your money at the end of the day. The second thing is, first of all, as soon as you enroll within the current legal framework, if you enroll for the voluntary contribution, you definitely automatically qualify for the mandatory benefits. It implies that when you come and you enroll today, you cannot now come tomorrow and say, because it was a voluntary arrangement, I now want to take my money. Yeah, you will actually, you won't be in position to do that. Until
you hit the retirement age.
Exactly. So when you enroll for voluntary, automatically you qualify even for the mandatory contributions. So that implies that now either you'll take your money when you're 55 years of age, or if you're 50 and unemployed, or if you crossed over you left the country, you immigrated, or let's say maybe you became very sick and you could not work, or the last option is if you passed on. So now the thing is, within this current voluntary setup, yes, you can enroll under the voluntary scheme, but then the mandatory terms are what applies to you. So you're also required to actually remit a contribution on a monthly basis.
On a monthly basis?
Yes.
5,000 Uganda shillings.
That's the minimum. But I know it depends according to someone's cash flows.
I could decide to remit 50, 100 or 200,000?
You can even do 5,000 on a daily.
I see.
For example, someone who is a boda rider could make an income of 50,000 on a daily, and then just choose and say, on a daily 10% of my income should be saved, and then they save under that scheme. But of course, like we said, if there's an employer under whom they report to, who is registered, then you register under that, so you can continue to remit.
So Romy Busiku is here working and get a job in Dubai. They call me, they're like, okay, Romy, you do have an opportunity, but I was saving with the NSSF. In that event of me going to Dubai, can I ask for my money?
If you're going to Dubai,
immigration.
Have you migrated to Dubai? Oh, you just took a trip for Dubai Expo?
I'm going to work for good.
Well, if you migrated permanently to Dubai, then you can actually qualify for your money.
I see. Even though I've been saving for only 2 years?
No, it should be at least a minimum of 3 years.
I see.
Yes, you can qualify for your money. But if it's just a visit, you know, we have so many important people who just come and say, okay, now of course our members are important.
Yes.
I am going to Kenya for a trip, and I think I need to take my money.
I might not return.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, and there is no evidence that this is actually an immigration process.
Indeed.
If it's a tour, you're not actually, or if you just got a job for maybe 2 years, because you're going to come back here. But you mentioned a very interesting scenario about the diaspora. And there are many Ugandans out there in the diaspora who actually are also enrolling for this, because they were here and they're in formal employment, but then now they migrate the other side, and yes, they also have a form of social security, but then we have good returns here actually. So then they decide, why don't I enroll for the voluntary? Good enough, they already have a number, so they fit within the other category that I shared. So all they do is just get online, and actually download the form, fill it, and then send it to the voluntary people and say, I want to enroll, and then they can remit their contributions.
From Dubai?
From Dubai, using their cards. You can use your Visa card, your MasterCard, American Express. We have a platform that allows you to do card transfers.
That is really amazing. I mean, it doesn't stop even in Dubai, even in the US. And you also did tell us the minimum contribution should be 5,000 Uganda shillings. But if I wanted, as Romy Busiku, I could remit 500,000 Uganda shillings. And I'm also in the know that in the event, as we proceed with this venture, I can actually decide and say, I cannot actually give you 500,000 every month. Let me reduce it to 100,000. That is possible, right?
Yes, that is possible.
Acquaintance.
Just the minimum, just provided you meet the minimum of 5,000 shillings a month. Your contributions can vary according to what you can afford. But the most important thing is you'll be saving for your retirement.
Indeed.
And on a rainy day, you'll actually appreciate that saving. Yes.
All right, let's also talk about another issue, the mode of payment. What is the mode of payment?
Okay, so the mode of payment, we've made it really very easy for our members. The first thing is mobile money. You can use our *254 hash code, or you can use actually *165 hash, *185 hash to remit your contribution. When you go under financial services, you choose NSSF payments. But you have to already be a registered member for voluntary contributions, because a mandatory member like me is not allowed to again remit under the voluntary contributions. You see, so it has to be that your account has been activated to accept voluntary contributions. That is when you can. I saw you were quickly going to *16. That's why I had to to tell you that.
*254 hash.
Yes, there's *254 hash. There's *165. There's *185 hash.
Can I use the email or the website NSSF? NSSF.org.
You can also use the website. If you are an employer, you can go to the website and then you generate a transaction reference number. And then you remit your contribution using mobile money. But also you can also remit that contribution using the bank. If you get a transaction reference number, you can use it at the bank, or you can use it, if your contributions are less than 5 million, you can use mobile money. But also, if you're an individual, like we said, and you're in the diaspora, you can remit your contributions using your card on our e-platform.
Go ahead.
So those are the avenues to pay. Use mobile money, use your card, use the bank. We have so many options for you to actually access these payments here.
What is the uptake? What is the uptake of this plan? I was looking at the numbers, some 33,000 members.
Exactly.
Yes, and I was amazed because the COVID-19 pandemic ravaged people in 2020, but you still managed to accrue some 38 billion Uganda shillings.
Yes.
All right, how did you do it?
That is exactly the number. Uptake, okay, of course this product has grown. We rolled it out in 2016. And that is where we have the 33,000 and over 73 billion in terms of total deposits mobilized, which is really very good because it's almost like the size of a bank, you know, like a branch for a commercial bank. Most banks have those kind of deposits. So it really shows us that it's a very promising portfolio. And how did we do it? One, first of all, making it easy for the member to register. Two, making it easy for them to remit their contribution. And three, giving them a good return. Because last year you were aware that we declared a return of 12.15%. So if someone had 10 million, automatically, that is another 12.1, that is basically 10, that is 1.2 million added to their balance, if that was their opening balance at the start of the financial year. So that is how we do it. And beside, at least over the years, we've demonstrated to our members that they can trust us with their money. And so people are coming on voluntarily. When people see what you can do, they immediately opt for it because they see that the money is actually making more money. And instead of putting all their money in one basket, of maybe real estate or farming, they are diversifying their portfolios. And NSSF is an option that you can actually use to diversify your portfolio. Instead of saying, okay, for me, my retirement plan is my child, or my retirement plan is my farm. You need to diversify and create different options for your retirement.
I see.
Yes, you can have the farm, you can have the children, you can have your real estate, but you can also have your saving, long-term saving with NSSF, which will keep on earning returns. At the end of the day, you've accumulated your wealth and you still have your other assets on the side. So really that is what we are offering our members.
Ladies and gentlemen, the NSSF voluntary membership plan is very, very attractive. If you want to complete your registration, even the payments, you just have to go to www.nssfug.org.
Yeah.
Am I right? And you'll be able to get all the details that you need in that regard. Well, 31 billion Uganda shillings, yes, accrued in 2020, and 73 billion Uganda shillings up to date. That is how attractive this plan is at the NSSF. Well, would like to know another issue. The NSSF Amendment Bill, it's being touted as one avenue that will help this fund grow, especially the voluntary membership plan. How so? What is in this membership, NSSF Amendment Bill, that will help the voluntary membership plan
That's
grow?
a great question.
Yes.
Although it's a little premature for me to confidently talk about the bill, because
what is in this bill that will help the voluntary membership plan?
First of all, I just want to issue a disclaimer that this bill is still being discussed in Parliament.
Indeed.
And the bill is being sponsored by the Ministry of Gender. NSSF is a beneficiary of the amendments, but we are not the ones driving the reforms. Having said that,
we're getting word that if it is enacted after everything,
exactly,
yes, that it will help this voluntary membership plan to grow from 73 billion Uganda shillings.
That is very true. If the
what are some of the proposals in there?
Okay, some of the proposals are one. If you are a mandatory contributor,
yes,
you are now currently within the existing NSSF Act. You're not allowed to remit for yourself a voluntary contribution.
Oh yeah.
And that is why in the beginning of the interview I told you that you cannot now activate your account unless you've registered as a voluntary contributor, because the current framework doesn't allow. But the reforms are making it possible for a mandatory contributor to now remit a voluntary contribution. And why is that? Because it's speaking to adequacy. And actually, why we are talking about adequacy is most of the people who are getting paid their NSSF benefits, the average payout sum is 16 million shillings, and these are people who have actually worked for a number of years.
Yes.
So, and it is not surprising that when we ask them, when we run a survey with our existing members and actually ask, how long did your money last? We usually realize that this money lasted for 2 years. 98% of the members who responded to the survey, where we interviewed about 1,500 people, said that they had used all their money in 2 years. And so that aspect of allowing a mandatory contributor to top up their contribution speaks to adequacy. Because again, within the same survey, you realize that when you ask people, they are not able to maintain the quality of life they were maintaining while they were employed, because now their earnings have reduced. And at that point, someone is trying to make certain decisions, like maybe invest in housing or something, which again, the money just gets stuck there. So because of that, the new bill is allowing people to increase their contribution so that actually they can have more when they retire. So that is the first thing in terms of voluntary. And of course, also those people who don't qualify and those people who are not employed by, let's say, like I was saying, the current act says if you are an employer, you can register, then register your members.
Yes.
Now the bill allows for any single person who is in employment to come and register for themselves as a voluntary contributor, you know, and remit for themselves.
You're a contractor,
yes,
and the company is not remitting NSSF on your behalf, but it's only doing so for staffers or permanent people. So for yourself, you can actually go as an individual and register.
You can come as an individual
after the enactment of the bill. I see.
Yeah, and so that is going to allow people options to come forward as voluntary contributors without actually any restrictions. And the other beauty of it is that the Act is allowing us to innovate, you know, and vest the powers with the board. So, sorry about that. So that implies that we can now have flexibility.
Indeed.
If you notice that within the current voluntary contribution, when you come in as a voluntary contributor, the mode of exit is within the mandatory scheme. But now within what we are working on, because the powers will be vested in the board, you know, and the minister to define new benefits for members. So that implies that there's a lot of leeway for us now to innovate.
I see.
So we can now, instead of restricting a voluntary contribution to 50 years, 55, and, you know, survivors and what, we can now come up with creative exit points so that you can save voluntarily towards a goal. So and exit at that point when you've accomplished your goal.
The 73 billion Uganda shillings you've saved so far, is it just lying idle? What are you doing with the money?
That's a good question. Well, the 73 billion is invested. We have three asset classes.
All right.
The first is bonds, that is the government paper. So we put close to between 77 to 80% of all the money that we get. The 73 billion inclusive, we invest it in government paper. And then the other asset class that we actually invest in is real estate. And that is why we are talking of Loboa, we are talking of pension towers, we are talking of Simbe, Temangalo. That is the other, and that takes about 8 to 10% of our portfolio. The difference is then put in equities. That is the likes of Umeme, the likes of Uganda Clays, Stanbic. So that is where the balance goes. So this money is invested, immediately it comes. And why is it invested? Because we have a mandate to preserve the members' savings. The NSSF Act provides for a return on the members' contribution, and minimum return should be 2.5%. But as a fund, we said no, 2.5%, given the inflation rate, is not adequate to preserve your contributions. So what we do, we actually invest this money and commit to at least paying 2 basis points above the 10-year average inflation, so that at least you know that your money is preserved. So we invest this money as soon as it comes in, it earns a return. This return is given back to the member. Part of that revenue that is generated from the investments is used to run the operations of the fund. The bulk of it is paid back to the members.
Of course, Barbara, right now the contentious conversation pertains to the issue of midterm access. Yes. When the enactment of the NSSF Amendment Bill is actually done with, will we be talking about midterm access for this group also, under the voluntary membership plan, the 33,000 members? Will they also access part of their money?
That's a good question. Midterm access will cut across because within the ongoing provision and the ongoing debates and really, if we look at the last submission from the president, the parliamentary debates that are ongoing, the current midterm access provides for someone who is 45 and has actually saved with the fund for 10 years. All
right, you're going to be giving us more details on midterm access. We are not actually wrapping up the conversation, we're actually returning on that issue of midterm access. You're still watching Morning at NTV. I'm talking to Barbara Alimi. She is the head of marketing and communications at the National Social Security. All right, the head of marketing and communications at the National Social Security Fund, that is Barbara Alimi. She's still with me right here in the studio. We are talking about the NSSF voluntary membership plan, but that aside, we had reached the point where we're discussing the issue of midterm access. Who is actually going to be getting this money? Are members under the voluntary membership plan also indeed going to be accessing this money? She was telling us yes, but then she was still giving us some more details. Barbara, yes, go ahead. Okay. The voluntary members, they can also access the midterm money.
Yes, the voluntary members can also access, because this is going to cut across the organization. Anyone who is 45 or has saved for 10 years, and that is within the existing provision. But like we said, it's too early for us to discuss the clauses within the bill, because these are still being subjected to debates in Parliament. Yeah, but that is the current clause that has been provided. And that will definitely cut across whether you're a voluntary contributor or you're a mandatory contributor. Provided you fit within that description, you can access your money.
The money is there.
The money is there.
Because Richard Biarogava, the managing director of the NSSF, came out sometime in the last couple of months and he said the money was not there. Then he later changed guard and then said the money is there. We want to make sense of this. What exactly did he mean? Is the money there? Is the money not there?
Yes. That's a good question. He actually said the money is there. But when he said the money was not there, he meant that the money is invested,
I see.
you know, in the asset classes.
It's not liquid money.
Because when you get money, you align it to the timelines when you should pay.
I see.
The current NSSF scheme is a scheme that caters for people for retirement, and that is how it has been skewed. So when we get your money, we know you're with us for the long term. So we invest this money in long-term assets. And that is what he explained subsequently after saying the money is not there lying, but the money is invested.
And it is there.
In fixed assets, 20-year bonds. You see the central bank now is issuing 20-year bonds, 15, 10-year bonds. So those are the kind of instruments. Buying shares, for example, we recently participated over 3 years ago in the CPLI IPO. We own various shares in various companies here, and also basically real estate. All these are long-term investments which are aligned to actually the plans that people have, because most members will possibly register with you when they are maybe 25 or 30, you know, and then you know for sure that their exit is at 55. So when someone registers, so you know it's a long-term arrangement, and so you put the money in long-term. And that is really what he meant, that the money is not there, it's invested in long-term assets. Yeah. But the money is there, and the fund is in position to pay, and he definitely came forward and put the members' minds to rest when he said, yes, the fund has the money to pay, although it's invested, but the fund can get the money to pay.
The president had his own reservations. The president said he was not happy with the fact that we were going to allow those individuals who had been working for 10 years or so to actually access this money, those who were 45 years of age and above to access this money. Said that would make the number so huge, or many people accessing this money, and it would kill the fund. Is it true, if we allow midterm access, it will kill the fund?
No, the initial bill that was sent to the president actually had provided for anyone who has saved for 10 years.
Two categories.
To access their money. Anyone who was 45 to access the money. Anyone who was, let's say, disabled and out of employment to access up to 70% of their money. If that happened, if they were disabled and then they became unemployed to access their money. And remember that. But
if you're able-bodied and you lose your job, you don't access?
No,
it's a preserve for the PWDs.
That was specific to the people with disabilities.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So, but that was going to actually be in force with also the existing access provisions, because now if someone lost their job at 50 years, they still access their money. You see, eh? So that meant that if someone, let's say, was lucky enough to start work, let's say at 21 or 22, they would access their money at 32. They would again access their money at 45, and they would access their money at 50 and 55, which would also imply that the member is now not saving enough for their retirement. So there are two things to that.
Go ahead.
They were not going to save enough, and then the fund would have to keep paying out all the time, because you're paying out to people now. It would actually now mean that we are almost like paying you, because if we are paying you after 10 years, then paying you after another 5, then paying you after another 5. So there was going to be a continuous payout. And that is why the president said, no, this is not good for the member, because the assumption and what we encourage members to do is to have short-term savings, medium-term savings, and long-term savings. So the fund is specifically speaking to long-term savings. It doesn't actually cut across for short-term savings.
I see.
Otherwise, would kill the circles, would kill the banks, because every person has financial needs that are short-term in nature, medium-term, and long-term. For example, school fees is something that is short-term in nature. Something like, let's say, education is medium-term, because you educate either yourself or your kids over a period of 5 to maybe 15 years. But retirement is a long-term saving.
I see.
And that is the differentiator that we're trying to create. And that is why the president saw these And in his wisdom, he said, no, this is not good for the member, and it's also not good for the fund. Yeah.
Could it be that the viewer or the citizen has failed to differentiate between the two, which is an employee-employer fund and also a social protection tool? Is it because many of us have actually, many individuals out there think NSSF is a social protection tool rather than an employee-employer fund where money is remitted at the end of retirement? And that's why people have been clamoring for midterm access and saying, if I have my money with the NSSF, why am I not accessing this money? Why am I waiting for retirement when I might not even hit 45? I'm 30 right now. I could die tomorrow because of COVID-19. I should be accessing my money. So you have so many people who are regarding this NSSF fund as a socio-protection fund or tool, yet it is an employer-employee fund where money is doled out at the end of retirement.
Okay, that is a really great question, and there are many issues that you have pointed out there. The first thing is speaks to what actually NSSF can provide. And currently what NSSF provides is a lump sum payment to a person who is either of age, 50 or 55, or someone who is an invalid, or someone who has left the country, or someone who has actually passed on. So the money goes to their next of kin. And within the International Labour Association, there are several provisions for social protection. And they speak to things like there should be housing, education, health benefits, including even maternity. Some of those are provisions within the International Labour Organization. So the current NSSF Act does not necessarily provide for those benefits. But within the amendments, the NSSF Amendment Bill, we are being given leeway to now innovate and speak to those social security needs. And so that really is a very good thing that you mentioned, and it's something that we are cognizant of within our current legal framework. And yes, we know that within the current legal framework, there are a few things we can do.
I see.
But when the legal framework is enhanced, we can do much more in the area of social security.
Let's talk about the future of this fund, the National Social Security Fund. What is the future of this fund, given the fact that we are reopening in January of 2022? More people who had been in deep slumber, whose businesses were, also in deep slumber. Don't you think with the resuscitation of the economy and so forth, there are more chances of adaptability and the NSSF actually growing its money and base?
Yeah. That's, you already sound like an NSSF person.
Indeed.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the future of the fund is actually, one, to ensure that we are more relevant to our members. And that is to provide them with more benefits.
Indeed.
Yeah, that is the first thing. Two, to ensure that actually social security coverage actually cuts across for every Ugandan who is within the working age population.
Indeed.
Because currently our coverage is really just maybe around 10% in total. That is, if you look at the public service pension scheme, you look at the armed services schemes and NSSF, if you total that up, it's not more than 10% of the working population that is covered. So the new bill is going to allow for us to extend coverage. So definitely when we look at the future, we look at a future where every Ugandan who is in the category of a working age population and who is engaged in any form of meaningful economic activity will be a member of the fund. So really for us, and we'll be creating an impact in their lives by speaking to their social security needs and ensuring that at least we can meet some of those social security needs. And of course, when we are able to mobilize enough savings, savings is one of those things that spurs economic development. And when your ratio of savings to the GDP increases, then your country also grows. And we are able to actually invest this money more within the country. Like, let's say, whenever the government issues treasury bonds, we buy these bonds. And definitely this government issues these bonds to unlock money for the country. So everyone is going to be happy. The members are going to be happy, they have more. There'll be more people with social security coverage. and the country will also develop economically.
Indeed, I
So
can
that's the
see
future.
optimism
see it.
written on Barbara Alimi's face, and indeed,
Thank you.
the future is bright. And indeed, thank you very much, Barbara Alimi, the head of communications and also marketing at the National Social Security Fund, for joining us and making sense of the NSSF voluntary membership plan and also midterm access and everything that is surrounding the National Social Security Fund. Thank you very much. And regards to Richard Biarugaba, the MD, and everyone working there.
I sure will. Thank you so much.
Indeed. And then, of course, you're still watching the #1 breakfast show in the country, Morning at NTV. We take pride in the fact that we lose sleep on a weekday basis just to bring you this information that you really need. Please grab yourself a cup of Inspire Africa coffee. You'll be able to resuscitate your body's creative processes in no time. And also, in a bit to maximize on continued learning, please, there is that U Lesson app. Go and download it right now.